Football Tailgate is sponsored by BetUS. Use promo code TAILGATE and get a 125% sign-up bonus on your first deposit. BetUS is where the game starts.
Hello and welcome back to another edition of the Hoosier Football Tailgate here on the Hoosier.com. Been away for a couple weeks to try to get some recharge of the battery and I had to fill in for Mr. Jim Coyle a little bit last week and appreciate you all being along with me tonight as we get back up in the saddle this evening. Just do me a favor. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe and notification bell so that you get notified when we have live events on Thursday evenings. And as we get into the season, we'll be doing 2 a week. So you'll be able to be updated on that. Bring a friend next time. Have them come and watch the video as well with you on the lives as we prepare for this 2025 season. One that everybody is thinking the Hoosiers are going to do quite well. After coming off the Cinderella season a year ago, college football playoffs. So it's that time. Tonight's emphasis as we go through the month of July will be looking at the 2025 season preview. And tonight we're going to talk about the non-conference slate here in a little bit, as well as Colin McMahon will join us tonight and talk a little bit about his seasonal positional preview that he just got done recapping after all the spring practices and all through the early months of the summer of each position group that Indiana has, as well as looking at maybe the positions that they need some help with. We'll get his intake on all that and see how those things line up. And is there a position that has a question mark behind it? Is there a spot on the offense or defense that can look for some early signs from maybe newcomers or even first-year players being a possibility within the 2 deep? So we'll get Colin's feedback on that and his fine work that he does there at the Hoosier.com. Remember, get over there today, get that subscription, $1 for the first month, 50% off for the rest of the year. You get everything from the Hoosier.com, as well as On3 and Rivals, as we are now a partner up with Rivals, as On3 has bought them out. And now they've kind of joined together to create a dominant force in the coverage of college athletics. So get over, get that subscription. It's well worth your time and money to get all the updates that they provide you, not just in the overall seasonal brackets of the sports, but more importantly, recruiting. And that is the key component too, is all the ideas of what, comes along during the recruiting year. And you can't miss out on some of that coverage that is provided there at the Hoosier.com. And Colin, Alec Lasley, Zach Browning, all the gentlemen over there do a great job as it pertains to covering the Indiana Hoosiers as we get started with the 2025 season. First up, we're talking about the Big Ten Media Days that is fastly approaching. Next week, come Monday, the Indiana Hoosiers will be up on the clock, so to speak, as we'll get to hear from Coach Signetti, as well as other Big Ten coaches that day. The Big Ten Network will be providing the coverage, but you can also go over to the Big Ten website and also get their information of who will be available on each of those days. So Indiana will get off to a early start by having it on Monday, which I'm sure Coach Signetti is very appreciative of, because fall camp will be starting here rather shortly. I do believe they come in the week of the 28th. They get officially like 30 days prior to kickoff to get X amount of practices in. So it's here. They're gearing up right now. The coaches are back at it full time, preparing their install and installational schedules for camp. The kids are going through their final phases of testing, I'm sure, there at the weight room, as well as some of the agility work that they will have them do. And before you know it, they'll be out on the field, and it'll be 2025 season at our fingertips. Also, looking at that, the Hoosiers ranking and recruiting rankings have been on fire this entire month with a numerous of commitments, and actually competing for some major prospects are still in the makings. Right now, Indiana's ranked number 31 in the nation in their overall recruiting class and number 11 in the Big Ten. So you can see that they have had some great success in the recruiting aspect of things. And they've got a chance to pick up maybe a couple 4-stars here over the next few days, which would be nice pickups if they could get that accomplished so far. The other thing was, we talked about report date coming up here on the week of the 28th. And then as well as new with the NIL and things, it's amazing to hear some of this. You've got schools, major schools that are already complaining about the deficits that they will incur this year, like University of Michigan, who's already complaining about a $27 million deficit they will have in their athletic budget. And at the same time, the new NIL Go that is being run out of the College Sports Commission through Deloitte for every NIL deal over $600 has already met its first headbutting with the lawsuit crowd in terms from the settlement. And there is a potential chance that there may be another lawsuit in terms of how they interpret the business purposes for NIL deals. And there's a conflicting opinion of what that means between the NIL Go people and the people that settled the lawsuit. So it's going to be a interesting year with all this because it's all new. Indiana has done well in preparing with all their things thus far in terms of being in a position of power, so to speak, in terms of how they're divvying up the revenue share. And then, of course, their NIL stuff has gone very well. And I wouldn't anticipate them to have any issues or problems when the season gets going and everything has to go through NIL Go. But that's a situation to keep an eye on, because not only that is occurring in the background, there is also supposedly the president is enacting a executive order as it pertains to NIL that no one in the conference office, be it the Big Ten or SEC, is either aware of, nor is any of the other entities like the College Sports Commission and stuff are aware of this potential executive order or what it entails. So we're going to see some curveballs here as we get going along. So just bear with it and keep abreast, and we'll try to keep you all up to date with all the things with NIL and such. So stay right tuned here to the Hoosier Tailgate. And tonight, just remember, if you got a question, once we bring Colin on here, by all means, throw it in the chat. We'll try to get to it, get it posted up, and get an answer for you. and fully encourage you to participate along, whether you're on YouTube or via X or Facebook. However you are joining us this evening, by all means, feel like you have a question that you would like to have an answer to. We'd love to answer that if we see the question, but it's got to be up in the chat so that we can get to it. And before I bring Colin on here real quick, I was asked a question today while I was on with Jim Coyle this morning, was unable to answer it, and wanted to get to that prior to us jumping into the topic with Colin. And Robert is correct. Summer football class is now in session. There may be a quiz at the end of tonight's show, but the question was this: rank the top 5 quarterbacks in the Big Ten. And how did I see that from my perspective? I do believe that Luke Altmaier from Illinois is the top quarterback in the Big Ten. You could argue about Drew Aller, but I don't see him being better than Luke. And I'm splitting hairs there, so don't take that as the grain of salt. So I'd have Luke there and Drew probably second, because we've seen their body of work. The only other one that would be within that area would be Fernando Mendoza in terms of what he did last year at Cal. Now, we haven't seen him play for Indiana yet, but he does have a body of work where he threw for over 3,600 yards a year ago. And I do believe he's in the top 3 quarterbacks already in the conference. After that, you could split hairs. I think the Nico out at UCLA would probably be 4 or 5 on how you looked at it. And then probably I would think Raiola would be a top 5 quarterback in the Big Ten, probably there at 4 or 5, depending on what you wanted to do with Nico. But I would see it that way. Now, that leaves out Dante Moore at Oregon, Bryce Underwood, who's a true freshman. I can't see that. Desmond Williams Jr., he played against Indiana last year in their game. And the transfer at Iowa, Mark Gronowski, who I do think is a very good quarterback. I don't necessarily think that he's in the top 5 in the league. So, and I don't think the Sayin kid at Ohio State is going to necessarily be as good as people think he will be right off for Ohio State. As a matter of fact, Ryan Day has already said that quarterback race is far from over in terms of who sealed up the number 1 spot there. So I do see Mendoza within the top 5. I see Altmaier from Illinois as my number 1 overall quarterback in the Big Ten. Aller from Penn State at 2, and then probably Dylan Raiola at Nebraska as 4, and then Nico, the young man that transferred from Tennessee, at number 5, and I am not pronouncing that last name because I know that I'm going to butcher it anyway. So that would be the top 5, and then the rest is kind of a throw up because none of them have really played that much, but I would probably go the Williams kid at Washington, and Gronowski from Iowa is in that 6, 7, 8 category. I just can't put a guy up like Bryce Underwood, who has never played a college snap, as being in that top tier. So we'll see. And there's a lot of new quarterbacks in the Big Ten. That is correct. So without further ado, let's move on here, and let's bring in the man, the myth, the legend, Colin McMahon from the Hoosier.com. Can you hear me, Colin?
I can.
And I've got you loud and clear. And if anybody is noticing any issues with the audio, please let me know in chat so that we can try to correct it. So bear with us if that is it. But I think we've got all the demons out of our system from that there was there before. But I appreciate you coming on tonight, Colin. And I know that you've been working your tail off with everything that has been going on right now. I know that you just heard my kind of top 5 quarterbacks in the Big Ten that I just kind of threw out there. And I kind of have Mendoza at number 3. Where would you see the top 5 quarterbacks in the Big Ten, or who would you think would be the top 5 in your list?
Well, I gotta say, I have the same exact top 3 as you. I think that Altmaier is number 1, and then I gotta go Aller at number 2, and then I think Mendoza slots in right there at number 3. And then number 4, I also agree with you there. Dylan Raiola, I feel like is he's a top talent, and I feel like he's gonna make a jump his sophomore year. I think that Nebraska is going to be an improved team. They're not necessarily going to be an elite Big Ten team, but I feel like Raiola is a key to their success, and I think that he's going to have a great year. And I do think there's a drop off after the top 3.
Yeah.
I think that Mendoza, Altmaier, and Aller are kind of separated themselves. And then I have Raiola at 4, and then number 5, I'm going Desmond Williams Jr. from Washington. I think that he's a talent that hasn't really proven himself much. He didn't play much last season. To my knowledge, he only played in the bowl game, maybe more at the end of the season. But he showed in the bowl game against Louisville. He played a good game, and I mean that's solid competition. Obviously, bowl games are different with all the players sitting out and whatnot, but I think that he's kind of a dark horse at number 5. You know, Sayin and Underwood at Ohio State, Michigan, those guys are unproven, like you said. And then Dante Oregon, he's a great talent, former 5-star recruit, and he's a big question mark, but I don't necessarily have him in the top 5. And then Nico Iamaleava is my best attempt to pronounce that name. You know, his whole controversy kind of clouds things. I think he's going to get off to a rough start at UCLA, but I think eventually he's going to come around. But again, I still don't have him in my top 5. So my top 5, Altmaier, Aller, Mendoza, Raiola, and then Williams Jr. rounds out the list there.
We'll try to get it all rocking and rolling here correctly. Let's talk about. Yeah, I think I'm going good now.
Okay. Yeah. They're saying I had an echo and then I couldn't hear you.
Now they say I have no sound.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting because we both can hear each other.
Big time, yeah. Can hear you.
That's
great.
Nuts. Let's go here. Try this again. Okay, now they say I'm back. Got to give it a time. Sometimes everything's delayed, so you got to let it all catch up. Robert, everyone in chat, everything good as of now. Yeah. Let me see if I can. How about now if I do that to the mic? All right. Can anyone tell me if this is better or worse? It says we are good. It sounds as if we're good now.
I think there might be a problem with my audio. I don't know what the echo's from.
Well, we'll keep going here, and what I'll try to do is mute when one of us is not talking, so that sometimes will help create it. And it says we're good. Okay, let's keep rolling here, and we'll try to keep going. All right, back on task. Let's talk about the article that you just finished up for the Hoosier.com that basically was a synopsis of every position group that was there through the spring, and kind of get your take on, each position group, and then maybe identify some position groups that you think are question marks for Indiana as we head into this season. There's no question that personally, I think the best position group, and maybe overall, is the offensive line, with the number of the depth that they have at that in that group. And so I do think that is by far the only time I can remember that the offensive line has been a positive going into the year, based upon not only the 5 guys starting, but their backups as well. They're very deep at the offensive line. But let's get some of your takes on some of that. We'll talk about offense first, then we'll head over to defense, but kind of give your just a synopsis of all that, and talk to some things that set you up for what really good offensively.
Yeah, and so I obviously wrote all those stories, kind of given a breakdown of each position. I listed every single player that was on there, and I kind of went starters, backups, third string, and then I listed depth pieces, which more often than not ended up just being the true freshmen who probably won't play during the 2025 season. And so we started with quarterback, finished with special teams. The series was like probably a month in length, because it's not easy writing a paragraph or two on every single scholarship player on the roster, right? But we got that done. You guys can go check that out on the Hoosier.com. I'd say they're probably the best breakdowns out there for Indiana football. And so the best position, I would say, on the offense, I would have to agree with you, is the offensive line. I think that the mix of returning players versus the mix of transfers is really good. You do have 3 transfers that are expected to start week 1, Mikowski, Coogan, and Benson. But by the end of the season, it'll only be 2 transfers starting, hopefully, because Benson will eventually be replaced by Drew Evans, who's coming off of a season-ending injury last fall. His status is still up in the air. Hopefully we get some more information during media days if Coach Signetti is asked about that. But as far as the offensive line is concerned, Carter Smith might be a first-team all Big Ten kind of guy. He's the guy I circle at left tackle, and I think that he might be the key for the offense as a whole, protecting Fernando Mendoza, creating those gaps for the running backs, kind of making sure the offense is cohesive out of that left tackle position. And then Bray Lynch, who is going to be a guard, to be determined, right guard or left guard. It'll kind of depend on Drew Evans' situation. It might get shuffled around a little bit. But him at guard is another impact returner. He started last year for Indiana. And so I think those 2 guys, coupled with the 3 transfers, and then once Drew Evans enters the fold, you have an offensive line that is experienced, that is very deep. I mean, you have 6 capable guys, but even after that, you have some guys who can really make some noise. Evan Lawrence is a redshirt freshman. Jack Greer is a redshirt junior. And you even have some true freshmen who could potentially make an impact, not necessarily this year, but down the line. So the offensive line is set up great this year, and it's set up great for years to come. And so that's obviously a position I circle on the offensive side of the ball. Another one is running back. I think that the Hoosiers will be 3 deep. They're going to have Roman Hemby, they're going to have Lee Beebe, and they're going to have Kalen Black. And I think all 3 of those guys are capable starters in the Big Ten or at any Power 4 school, to be honest with you. And Indiana has 3 of those guys. And so I think they're going to be in tandem. I think that you look at Hemby and Beebe as kind of a replication of Justice Ellison and Tyson Lawton from a year ago, and Kalen Black is a returner, and he's only going to get better. And so I think by season's end, you might see none of those guys are 1,000-yard rushers, but all of them have 800, 900 yards. And so the running game is going to be a major strength. And so with the offensive line and running game taking that much attention, you kind of forget that Indiana has a transfer coming in who threw for 3,000 yards a year ago at a power school. And so Fernando Mendoza is a really talented guy. And yet in the story that was posted today, I had Indiana's quarterback unit 3rd out of 5th in offensive position groups, which is crazy to think about because of how talented Fernando Mendoza is, but yet he's not even one of the best positions on the field for Indiana. And then wide receivers and tight ends round out my list for 4th and 5th. I think the tight ends are the question mark for the offense. You have 2 transfers coming in. Holden Stays coming in from Tennessee, previously played for Notre Dame. And then you have Riley Nowakowski from Wisconsin. He was primarily a blocking tight end over there. And I don't really know because I don't think they're going to get much production. But then again, I don't think they need to. I think their wide receiver unit is solid enough. Their running game is solid enough where they're going to score enough points that way that they're not going to need to depend on the tight end. Last year you saw Zach Horton get involved on and off kind of throughout the season, but he was never really a top receiving threat. He was never the go-to guy. He was there in the red zone when Surratt and Cooper were covered, but other than that, he was more of a blocking tight end primarily, and he talked about that at length last year, that he was on the field to block, and anything in the passing game was extra, and that's kind of what I'm thinking going into this season as well. Holden Stays is probably the starter, I would say, with some confidence. But even if it's a tight end by committee, they can do enough on the blocking end of things that any yards that they gain by catching the ball is kind of just a bonus and a surplus to things. And so that's kind of how I look at the offense. It's going to be a great offense, and I think it's going to contend with top end of the country. To be honest with you, I think that they're going to lean on the offense a lot, especially against those high-flying teams like an Oregon who can really score some points. And I think they're going to be able to really compete. But I think that game against Illinois is going to be the test. Mendoza versus Altmaier, kind of, if Mendoza outplays Altmaier and Indiana goes out of that game 4-0, there's going to be a conversation there. Is he the best quarterback in the Big Ten? And is Indiana's offense the best in the Big Ten?
Yeah, no question about that. And I'm with you with the tight end situation. That is kind of the one position that you kind of have a little bit of a question mark. And I don't, a year ago, Indiana got a lot of mileage out of Horton, using him as an attached tight end, as kind of an unattached, where they moved him from right to left in the run game, and then spreading him out into the wide receiver position as that 4th wide receiver that enabled to keep him on the field for consecutive snaps. They may be more 10 personnel at times this year, which is basically no tight ends, 4 true wideouts due to that factor alone. We'll see. The running back room, totally get that conversation. I do think they have more possible home run hitters this year with BB and with Hemby, who has proven that he can take the ball and get the tough yardage, but then stack the yardage on top of that. And if he breaks through it, he's a big time runner as well. So no question. that Indiana's offense on paper, as we see it with those that are returning, and Mendoza can be the productive quarterback as much as Rourke was a year ago with consistency in his throws and accuracy. There's no question that this offense will rank highly in the Big Ten and be a great thing with the defense, because one thing Indiana did well a year ago was play a lot of complementary football with the defense. And that will also be a key thing for them this year, is to continue that style of play where they play a lot of complementary football offensively and defensively. So that is all up there on the Hoosier.com. All those breakdowns that Colin has done. Don't forget that you can get over and get that. Let's switch over to the defense, because in my opinion, I know they lose CJ West. I know they lost some other, Walker as the inside linebacker and some other key ingredients along that front 6 or 7. But I do believe they may have improved themselves this offseason at the D line and also in the secondary, because I do believe they have a secondary that's going to be lights out. So let's get your take on the Hoosier defense.
Yeah, like you said, there's a lot of losses, some big losses, like with West and Walker, but this is a great defense, and it's great because of kind of the big three, Kamara, Fisher, and Pons. And those are 3 guys that were All-Americans last year. Depending on where you went, they were second team, third team, honorable mention. Those 3 guys are first team All-American potential right there. I think that all 3 could end up being on the All-America first team. And I think that if you had just those 3 guys, that's a great defense in itself, but the supporting cast is also going to play a huge role. The guy that I circle, and I'm not the only one, and Kurt Signetti has talked about him at length, is Elijah Hardy. He's going to take over Jalen Walker's spot as a true sophomore. And he kind of made an impact even as a freshman last year. When you got towards the end of the season, he was getting the majority of the snaps, filtering in and out with Walker, with Fisher, with whoever else. He was kind of a major contributor. And I think that he's going to make a huge jump this fall. I think that when you get kind of to the midpoint of the season, Indiana fans are going to start remembering that name. I think that him and Fisher, with that 2 linebacker unit that Indiana runs, I think that they might be the best linebacker tandem in the Big Ten, maybe in the country. I think that they're going to play so well together with Hardy more of a threat even in the pass defense. I mean, he had an interception in the spring game. He took it back to the house. And that kind of opened a lot of eyes there, but that's just kind of a small piece of what he can do. He can get involved in the run game, making tackles. He can get involved in the pass rush game, like we saw Jalen Walker do so often last season. And then obviously you have Aiden Fisher, the leader of the defense, who we know what he's capable of. We know how mature he is, what a great leader he is. But as a senior, this is his final year in college. This is his last chance to prove that he is capable of being an NFL linebacker. And I think that he is going to prove that. I think that, you might see his name being called next April in the NFL draft, along with D'Angelo Ponce, who is a projected first-round pick. I mean, he would have been maybe a first-round pick last year if he was able to enter the draft after a sophomore season. But he comes back. He's going to be a junior, and he's probably the best player on this roster. I think that offenses are going to look at him and they're going to look the other way. They're going to try to target the other guys in Indiana's secondary. He might not get that many interceptions or pass deflections this year simply because he's defending his receivers so well that they're not even going to throw his way. And so you look at Amari Farrell and Lewis Moore as the 2 starting safeties. Lewis Moore returns after a short stint with Ole Miss. He was solid for Indiana in 2023, and now he's back in Bloomington. Amari Farrell was a starter last year. He can really make a difference. And then going over to the other cornerback position, Jamari Sharp is another returner, and I think he can make a big impact as the guy that might be most targeted because of how locked down Pons is. And then in the nickel corner / rover position, as Indiana calls it, Devin Boykin, I think, is probably the starter there. But you have two capable freshmen in Ciante Stewart and Byron Baldwin that could get involved towards the end of the season. Those are two really, really talented true freshmen that I think are going to get a good amount of snaps by season's end. But as of now, week one, this defense is stout. This defense can make an impact, and it's not necessarily going to be a defense that just gets off the field on third down, because they're going to create turnovers. They're going to create noise. And I think that for as good as the offense is, this might be a defensive-minded team. This might be a team that leans on their defense throughout the majority of the season, and for good reason, because there's a lot of talent out there on the field.
Yeah, no question. The kid that I think is I think was a great pickup via the portal outside of Daly. And, we know what Indiana success they had with CJ West and Daly coming from that same school, and maybe even a better player from all practical purposes. But the Kellen Wyatt kid from Maryland that came in, I think he's another one that I think Indiana kind of snuck one across the line there. What's your thoughts on him?
Yeah, so I kind of glossed over the defensive line accidentally there. And I think that Kellen Wyatt is in an interesting position. Last year, coming over from Maryland, he primarily played defensive end, if I'm remembering correctly. And so he's a great candidate for the stud position in Indiana. I think he'd be a great fit there. But you already have an All-American in Mikhail Kamara already there. And so you have an interesting conversation of where does he slot in? Does he slot in at the other defensive end position for the Hoosiers? Like, does he go in for Stephen Daly? I'm sure that Daly was assuming that he was going to start when he decided to transfer to Indiana. But I think that Wyatt, he has a great talent, but I think that he's kind of going to be a jack of all trades for this Indiana defense. I don't know if he'll necessarily start week one, but I feel like as the season goes on, you might see him involved more and more often. It's football. Injuries are going to happen. Hopefully not at a high rate for Indiana, but when something like that strikes, it's important to have a lot of guys who can be versatile. And I think that Kellen Wyatt can be a very versatile guy. He could even possibly move to linebacker. I'm not 100% familiar with his background, if he's a guy that can go to multiple positions like that. But, coming from a Big Ten school, that he can play big-time football. And I think that he was a great pickup along with Hosea Wheeler, Stephen Daly, and then Dominique Ratcliffe is another kind of guy that not a lot of people have him projected to start just because of how good this Indiana defensive line is. But Dominique Ratcliffe is a name to keep your eye on the defensive line at the defensive tackle position. And so not only does the defense have a lot of talented guys on the starting line, but they have a lot of depth. And as the season goes on, the depth is going to be key because, like I said, injuries do happen, and, some guys may just not pan out, right? Some guys may just not perform. And so you're going to need kind of the next man up mentality, especially for those transfers who are going to maybe take some time to fit in, but they need to hit the ground running at the end of the non-conference, because that's when the schedule really starts getting good with the Illinois game and then the road game at Iowa. Those are the two games I schedule as the X factors. If Indiana comes out of those two games 5-0, I think that they are destined for a college football playoff berth. If they come out of those games 3-2, I really, really doubt that Indiana will repeat as being a member of the playoff. But that all remains to be seen. We're getting closer, but that's still a little ways away, so there's a lot more to talk about before that happens. But as far as the defensive line is concerned, rock solid. And I think that, like you mentioned, the transfers are going to play a big role.
Yeah, and I believe that Wyatt is going to be that position that Kamara occupied last year. He's going to be a 5 technique or a defensive edge player with his hand in the ground. I know they're moving Kamara to that outside linebacker spot that gives him a lot of flexibility. They can stand him up. They can put his hand down to transition to a 4-man front. So there's a lot of things there. The one thing that I think is, again, at the critical positions of O-line and D-line, they have depth. And you got to have depth at the Big Ten in the big fellas, because where Indiana's got caught with their pants down, per se, over, previous seasons, is what was their first team to their second team was a big drop off. I don't think that is a factor on either side this year. I'm not sure we've been able to say that in a long while for Indiana on both sides of the ball. A lot of flexibility there, a lot of guys that can play, especially on defense. You keep kids fresh. That's the important part, to get after the quarterback, and that's what they like to do. The biggest question to me is inside linebacker, of course. Holiday, he's played his part, did pretty good last year as he's in. And, Fisher is, a really good on the field captain, run the defense type of deal. And in the secondary, I think it's going to be their best secondary in a long while as well. I just think that they've got 2 corners they feel they can shut down, put them out there on islands, lock them up, and utilize their safeties to fit the run game or bring pressure. And that's what Bryant Haynes likes to do. He wants to bring pressure and play man on the outside or man free. They didn't do a lot of that last year because they just didn't feel they had that corner opposite of Pons that they could do a lot of it. So I do think you'll see a little bit more pressure. I do think you'll see a little bit more true man free, and using the safeties to fit up in there during, the rundown scenarios. So, that is kind of my take. I'm kind of with you on all that as well. Again, Indiana's biggest asset is going to be getting off to a great start again. And after we're done here, I'm going to start in that with that non-conference schedule, of which, out of those 3 games, the Old Dominion game, the first game of the season, will probably be their biggest test, as Kennesaw State has only got first-year head coach. They changed coaches last year, and they brought in a bunch of transfers. Dexter Williams, one of them, who was an Indiana player not too long ago. And then they play Indiana State, and Indiana State, I don't think, is going to be much of a challenge to Indiana. So it is what it is when it comes to that. But I think you've done a great job, Colin, with the article and stuff. I know that I don't think you're not going out to. Are you going out to Vegas?
I'll be in Vegas. Zach Browning will also be in Vegas, so him and I will bring you the on-site coverage on Tuesday. So we're only a few days away from that. Vegas should be a fun environment for it. Kind of an odd decision to put it in Vegas, but hey, it's a new age of college athletics. Anything's possible. Expect the unexpected, and especially with Curt Cignetti taking the mic, just like he did last year at Media Days. Who knows what he's going to say?
Yeah, correct. I mean, he is a definite entertainer, as he was a year ago when they were picked second to last, and he basically said those that picked us second to last at my previous stops were wrong. We actually won the conference that year. So it'll be interesting. I'm glad you guys are getting to go out. I was going to go out. Then some things became unavailable in order for me to be able to go out. So going to stick behind, but have fun, safe travels, and appreciate you coming on tonight as always. And don't forget, you can catch all of the writings on thehoosier.com, not only from Colin, but from Zach and Alec Lasley, both football and basketball coverage, second to none. And get that subscription for $1 for the first month, 50% off for the rest of the year. over there at thehoosier.com. Best, all the best again, Colin, and we'll get you back on here maybe prior to the season starting. Maybe we'll get you and Zach, and we'll do a powwow preview of the Indiana Hoosiers 2025 season.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Always a good time. I'm looking forward to being back.
All right, my man. You take it easy and safe travels. That's Colin McMahon from thehoosier.com. Great write-ups of the Hoosiers positional groups this year, and just did a phenomenal job with all that. And you get an idea of kind of how he feels with all the scenarios there with Indiana at the different positions. And I agree, Indiana's roster as it pertains to their top 22, I do think is going to be a very good, solid, above average football team when it comes to all 22 players on either side of the ball. I don't know if there's that much of a drop off from your first team to second team, especially up front, which is that's a huge component. And what they've got to do this year is they got to break through against the upper echelon of the Big Ten and be able to run the ball against the quote unquote Iowas and Penn States and Oregon type of teams, and complement their run game and pass game, and then their defense be able to continue what they've done over the years past. So very optimistic about Indiana in terms of what they have on the paper with black and white. Again, they have to go perform, but we'll leave that to Coach Signetti and the staff. I'm going to step aside, take a quick break here. When we come back, we're going to talk about the season preview of the 2025 Indiana Hoosiers and their non-conference slate right after this, all right here on the Hoosier Football Tailgate.
Hello, Hoosier Nation. Go to thehoosier.com and take advantage of the 50% off for the first month. Then 50% off on the first year of your subscription. You will get wall-to-wall coverage of the Indiana Hoosiers from Alec Lasley, Zach Browning, and the Coach Shannon Griffith on the Hoosier Football Tailgate, all on the Hoosier. Come.
Yeah, get over there and get that subscription to the Hoosier.com, as well as On3 and Rivals coverage all year long, and great publication as well. The other thing that wanted to follow up on, Phil Steele's magazine is out, and he does a great job with the previewing of all the conferences, especially all the P4 conferences and group of 5 conferences. Indiana has several guys listed in his top players in the Big Ten at each position group, and also thinks very highly of them as a team. I do believe he had them up in the upper echelon in his picks this year, and he did quite well last year. So get out and get that as well. It's a really good publication and something that I enjoy reading year round. And it's one of those things that I really think his reporting and breakdowns are pretty spot on and things of that nature, as well as CBS Sports is ranked Indiana amongst the nation's most explosives offenses ahead of 2025. And that's nothing new to us here at the Hoosier.com, as well as those that follow the Indiana Hoosiers. We know what that offense with Mike Shanahan at the helm and Coach Signetti, it is a very prolific offense that has the ability to put points on the board, and as well as being able to ground and pound when needed. So some things there starting to pop out. Remember, Colin and Zach will have the coverage from the Big Ten Media Day. And You'll be able to see some of that coverage on the Hoosier.com as well. And also the Big Ten Network will carry all that information and all the media opportunities from the coaches to players through their coverage of it on the Big Ten Network next week. And of course, Dick right here to the Hoosier.com and the Hoosier Tailgate, and we'll have you covered as well. Well, we're going to start talking about this non-conference schedule for Indiana. Again, I don't think it's a world beater. I think in this day and age of the college football playoffs and, all the different things that the Big Ten is about with 9 conference games, you can't just have teams pounding on each other against other big programs, quite honestly, as we've seen Indiana cancel the Virginia series and added Kennesaw State and I think it was Eastern Illinois to the lineup in 27, I believe, as well. Do I like that? No, I wish they'd have a little better flavor with that third non-conference game. I did love the Louisville series. I wish that would have continued. Or adding a Kentucky series like we've had in years past, because those are easily travel games for the fan bases of both institutions. But in today's game, and still needing to get to the magical number of 6 to be bowl eligible, irregardless of the college football playoffs, you put 3 games on the schedule so that you're halfway there by the time you enter Big Ten play. So I get it on both sides of the coin, but I do wish they would play those type of teams. I thought the Virginia home and home series would have been good as well. So that's my 2 cents, but I'm not the AD, and I'm sure Coach Signetti has his philosophical approach with that. And Scott Dolson did something last year that basically gave Indiana a huge advantage with the number of home games that they had. And he wasn't afraid to pull the trigger to put Indiana in their best light. Starting off the season, we've got Indiana opening up against Old Dominion. And that ball game is on I think it's a 2:30 kick there. FS1 will have the coverage of it. So it's a game that, again, will be a pretty good challenge for Indiana. And I say that from the standpoint of this team was 5-7 a year ago. They did have some good players. Grant Wilson, who is now a Indiana Hoosier, played for Old Dominion last year. However, he was hurt. I think he only played 3 games. But the quarterback that came in and replaced him played really well. And he finished up playing 9 games on the year. And we'll have more specific breakdowns of each offense and defense as we get to game week to talk about, the ins and outs of offense and defense, who are their guys and so forth and so on. But their coach, 6-year, he's 20-30 at Old Dominion, a very new program when it comes to history. They've only been a Division I school now, probably almost 10 years maybe. But they're over and under for wins this year is 5.5 and plus 1,000 on winning a conference title. But you can see here by looking at their coaching staff, Rick Rainey as that head coach in his 6th year. You got Kevin Decker and Blake Sealer as the offense and defensive coordinator. Their defensive coordinator's good. He's got a good scheme. They run a 3-4, very similar to what Indiana does with a lot of pressures. And they were a good defense pretty good defense a year ago in terms of, having the skill set to compete. Now, what happened to them, as you can see here, they're both identical almost. They did give up over 402 yards a game. 25.2 points per game in scoring offense, or scoring defense, which is really pretty good when you think about it. for a defense to only surrender 25 points a game on average. That's pretty darn good. And I do believe they have some cats that can play on defense. Offensively is where it'll be interesting. They do have that kid returning, averaging 378 yards per game, 25.4 points per game, which is low in today's game. I mean, realistically, you should probably hopefully average about 28 to 35 points per game as an offense to have a chance to be a winning team. But again, I think this is a good test for Indiana. I just think this game, out of all three of them, will be the game that Indiana better come playing at on all cylinders hitting, because that's a game that we see it in every year, where a group of 5 team goes to a opposing Power 4 school and comes away with a victory because the P4 school wasn't ready, or they had a tremendous amount of mistakes and turnovers. And that's the type of game this one you have to be on guard with. And I guarantee it that Coach Signetti, having played against this group when he was at James Madison, will have the attention of everybody leading up to that game. Kennesaw State out of Conference USA, they just had another coaching change. They were 2-10 in Conference USA, or 2-10 overall. And over under in terms of wins this year, as you can see, they're not a great target when you think of over under is 3.5. Brought in a lot of transfers. Dexter Williams, who played in Indiana, is now there. He transferred again from Georgia Southern. Jerry Mock is their head coach, and he was the running back coach with the Jacksonville Jaguars a year ago. Prior to that, he was the running back coach at Tennessee. So a lot of Tennessee flavor on his staff, as both the O coordinator and D coordinator have ties to the time that Jerry was there. And I do think, let's see here. I think that's an accurate assessment. I do think they're similar in a lot of ways, but I do think that's a correct assessment of thought pattern that may be a little bit better than FIU, but again, not world beaters. But if you do things that give them a chance in a ball game, they're going to give you every bit of game that you want. And what Indiana did a great job a year ago with these teams is they never gave them any hope. They started driving the nails in the coffin from the time the word go was said and the kick of the ball for 4 quarters. They did a good job of taking care of business and getting in and getting out with a W, and never give them a chance to have any success. And that's what it will take again. This team that's coming in from Georgia out of Conference USA, Kennesaw State, a fairly new team when it comes to, again, history as a football school, just adding it back again, less than 10 years ago. So Old Dominion and Kennesaw State are both youthful in their football programs. Coach Mock in his first season, and the 2 coordinators are new. So overall, what they had in terms of points per game, yards per game is really kind of irrelevant, because that staff is gone and they've got a completely new staff and a wholesale change in the roster. So that game will be a little bit of uncertainty coming into Bloomington because of the change. And I'm sure Indiana did a lot of scrambling this offseason to get an idea film-wise, so they could, put together some type of thought and idea of what they are going to see on offense and defense in terms of their preparation as they led into the season. So I would imagine they studied a lot of Tennessee stuff, and maybe some of what Jacksonville did offensively, to get an idea of what they potentially could see from them. But new staff, first-year head coach, coming off a 2-10 record out of the Conference USA. Again, I don't think it's a world beater, and I don't not think this is a team that Indiana should have any issues in beating handedly heading into next year from that perspective. So those first two games, again, are very critical, as every game is. It doesn't matter whether it's a conference game, whether it's non-conference. You only get 12 opportunities to play football. And it's the only sport where from the word go, it is, balls to the wall, full throttle all the way through November, December, with what you're doing week in, week out. You don't have a second chance at teams. Every game is played, and once that's over, it's over. You're not going to see them again until the following year, especially in the Big Ten Conference. But these games that are coming up will be vitally important for them to get off to a good start. Week 3 is an interesting contest with Indiana State. Kurt Mallory is the head coach there, a son of Bill Mallory. Kurt actually did coach at Indiana some time ago, and I know Kurt very well. We were on the staff together at Ball State in our first season as Division I coaches under Bill Lynch there back in 1994 and 5 when we were at Ball State. I've got a ton of respect for Kurt and the Mallory family as a whole. You will bet that they'll have a well-coached football team coming into Memorial Stadium to play Indiana. But I don't think they're going to have any depth or true hitters there that will give Indiana a bunch of problems. Now, the one thing that Kurt has done this year, he's changed their offense and defensive coordinator. Their defensive coordinator had, the guy that he let go had been there for a while. But the two coordinators there that are now are John Bear, who's coming in from an East Coast like Bucknell or somewhere out east. I didn't see any ties from that last year for why he got hired there at Indiana State. But that is going to be a new side of the ball for them. Mike Bath, who had been the coordinator there, a young man that played at Miami of Ohio, had a pretty good, successful career. He came to Indiana State from Western Michigan. Again, I know Michael because I recruited him back in the day out of Salina High School. I was hate to see that he was let go. And the other coach on the defensive side of the ball is David Ellison. Was a defensive coordinator at Ball State not too long ago. He was a head coach of Western Kentucky when they went as a full-fledged Division I member. He was a part of their staff under Jack Harbaugh that won the national championship, and he coached at Purdue prior to the change in staff there as the linebacker coach. Very good football coach. No, a lot of guys on this staff, because of the backgrounds that we have, are similar. But David's a very good technician, defensive coordinator. He will have their kids playing in a very good, a very good defense with everything, and so it'll be a good test for Indiana with that. So those 3 non-conference games for Indiana will be huge for them to get off to a great start. And just like last year, it's when you come out of the gates full throttle and you can put the product on the field that the fans expect, and also doing the things that they're capable of doing that we've seen with their own 2 eyes. The expectation is going to be there for them to win and win big in those ball games. And it also goes hand in hand with leading up to that Illinois match week 4. because week 4, 5, and 6 is going to be a big test for this ball club when you go Illinois, at Iowa, at Oregon. It's going to be a huge, huge test for this ball club. And a lot will be said about the season with those games for this Indiana team as they chart a path, hopefully back to the college football playoffs. But we'll have to wait and see. But those 3 games there are their non-conference schedule. We will lead up to each and every week as we lead up to the first week of camp with a preview of now the Big Ten schedule in front of us and maybe a little more of a breakdown. And I do think that we'll have that as we get ready to go into the season. So you have at least some background of the teams that Indiana's playing that will lead up to that first week. When we get into the season now, there'll be two shows a week, one on a Monday night and Thursday night. Monday, we'll recap the previous Saturday's game, and Thursday, we will preview Saturday's game for the Indiana Hoosiers with video and things of that nature, where we really break it down in order for you to have some semblance of what they're doing offensively and defensively on the preparation for the team they're playing Saturday. And then the recap, we'll talk about what they did right, what went wrong in these games, and hopefully talk a lot about winning like we did last year. Remember, get all the information on thehoosier.com for that great subscription rate of $1 for the first month, 50% off for the first year. I thank you again for joining me back here at the Hoosier Football Tailgate as we had a couple weeks off, but no more. We're here to get the things rolling for the 2025 season, and we thank you for being here with us tonight. But for now, I'm the coach, Shannon Griffith. This has been the Hoosier Football Tailgate right here on thehoosier.com. Good night, everybody.